In a remote village deep in Thailand, our story begins with a young man named Nyaran, the son of the village chief. One morning he is out in the fields, preparing rice seeds with the other villagers for the coming planting season. Everything seems peaceful until a ruthless gang of bandits suddenly arrives, looking to seize the village's resources by force. With nothing but a pair of twin sickles in his hands, Nyaran bravely stands his ground. Refusing to surrender, he boldly declares war and urges the villagers to fight for their home. But fear takes over the people, and Nyaran is left to face the bandits alone. In the end, he challenges the gang's leader, Tiger, to a one-on-one duel. The fight is fierce, and Nyaran nearly defeats Tiger. Cornered and desperate, Tiger orders his right-hand man, Kalong, to shoot Nyaran. But just when things look hopeless, the villagers finally gather their courage and rush back to help. Kalong panics and fires a shot, but the bullet accidentally hits his own boss instead. Tiger collapses while Nyaran survives with only minor injuries. The bandits retreat in chaos, fleeing for their lives. But peace does not return. Tiger has an older brother, an even more dangerous bandit leader, and Nyaran's father knows retaliation is coming. Fearing for everyone's safety, he urges the villagers to abandon the village before the enemy returns. A wealthy nobleman named Meek then steps forward, offering a deal. He promises protection, claiming his wealth can drive the bandits away. In exchange, he demands that Nyaran's younger sister, Soy, be married to him. This shameless proposal angers Thong, a young man who secretly loves Soy and refuses to let her be treated as a bargaining chip. Realizing the bandits have modern firearms, another villager named Natk suggests fighting fire with fire. He owns a rifle given to him by a monk who was once a soldier. Hoping the monk might have more weapons, they seek his help. But the monk explains that the rifle Natk carries was the only one he ever kept. If they want more guns, he says, they must find his old war companion, Yong, a skilled gunsmith who still manufactures weapons. With no other choice, Nyaran sets off to find Yong, accompanied by Thong and Natk. He sets out with his two friends. This is three idiot heroes. The journey is far from easy. They travel across the countryside on the backs of water buffalo and eventually enter a place known as the Snake Forest. As they carefully make their way through, Nyaran spots a deadly snake slithering near their feet and warns his friends to stay completely still. But then, in the most unfortunate and hilarious twist, Nyaran accidentally lets out a fart, startling the snake and causing it to crawl straight into his pants. After a long journey, the three friends finally reached another village. They hoped to gather directions from a young boy they met there, but the child turned out to be of no help at all. With no other choice, they continued on their way. Before they could leave, the village chief, a man named Chun, stepped forward in anger. The moment he recognized Nyaran, he grew suspicious, accusing the group of coming with evil intentions. He even threatened to kill them on the spot. But before the argument could go any further, a villager rushed in and reported that Chun's daughter was once again possessed by a violent spirit. Sensing an opportunity, Nyaran immediately volunteered to help. The girl named Banyan had long been tormented by a mysterious entity. In her possessed state, she screamed that she would rip open their stomachs if anyone dared to disturb her. Surprisingly, Nyaran decided to sing to her. And against all expectations, Banyan suddenly calmed down. For a moment, it looked as though she had returned to normal. Believing he had successfully driven out the evil spirit, Nyaran confidently asked Chief Chun to let them go in peace. But as they turned their backs, Banyan became possessed again, her eyes blazing with rage. Terrified, the villagers locked Nyaran and his friends inside with the demon girl. With no escape and no plan, all they could do was beg for mercy. In the middle of the chaos, Banyan paused and started scratching her itchy foot, creating an awkward and bizarre moment that none of them knew how to react to. Thong then spotted an unlocked window and whispered for the others to escape. In the rush, Nyaran accidentally dragged Banyan out with them. Luckily, once sunlight hit her directly, her body went limp and the spirit retreated. The villagers quickly tied her to a bamboo pole, and Nyaran continued pretending to be a spiritual expert. He demanded offerings for a ritual and ordered everyone to stay indoors. Night fell. Instead of performing any ritual, Nyaran, Thong, and Nak sat down and ate the offerings themselves. Their only plan was to rest and leave by morning. After overeating, Nyaran headed out to relieve himself, not realizing that Banyan's head was no longer attached to her body. On his way to the bathroom, he felt a strange presence following him. He stopped and looked around, but saw nothing. What he did not realize was that Banyan had now become a full ghost. In a hurry, he ignored the feeling and carried on. Meanwhile, his friends discovered the horrifying truth that Banyan's body lay headless. At that very moment, the ghost revealed herself before them. Panicked, they ran into an empty house, barricading the door with whatever furniture they could find. But it was too late. The spirit was already inside. Cornered and desperate, Nguyen pulled off a reckless move. He grabbed the ghost's exposed organs and bit down on them. The pain made the spirit shriek, and in that single moment of distraction, Nguyen and his friends made their escape. Meanwhile, news of Tai Gair's death reached his older brother, Tai Pom. Consumed by fury, he executed 2 of his own men on the spot, then turned to Kalong with a threat. He demanded that Kalong hunt down the one who killed his brother and bring him back alive. Without delay, Kalong gathered the bandit forces and stormed Nguyen's village. Standing before the frightened townspeople, he demanded they hand over Nguyen, the man responsible for Tai Gair's death. Realizing the villagers were in danger, the monk stepped forward and distributed protective charms, claiming they could make the wearer immune to any weapon. But the bandits did not hesitate. Kalong hurled a bomb toward the monk, causing a massive explosion. When the smoke cleared, the monk miraculously stood unharmed. The villagers gasped in awe, convinced the charm truly worked. In reality, the monk was silently suffering, holding in the pain from a burn on his backside. Still, their renewed belief gave the villagers courage to resist. Since the village only had one firearm, the monk decided to craft a large bomb that could drive the bandits away. He lit the fuse and ordered a villager to throw it, but in a ridiculous mistake, the villager tossed his torch instead of the bomb. With seconds left, the monk dashed forward and kicked the bomb toward the enemy. The explosion forced Kalong and his men to retreat, buying the village precious time. Far away, Nguyen, Thong, and Nak had already escaped Chun's village and continued their journey. On the road, they stumbled upon an illegal firearm deal. Things quickly turned violent, and Nguyen misunderstood the situation, thinking a robbery was taking place. Because of this, the woman involved in the deal, Uriah, was taken hostage by the armed men. Only after eavesdropping did the trio realize that Uriah was actually the daughter of Yong, the very gunsmith they were searching for. Without hesitation, the 3 of them launched a rescue mission. When they reached the kidnappers' hideout, Nguyen took down the guard holding Uriah, allowing Thong and Nak to storm inside. But the kidnappers soon noticed their presence, turning the fight into chaos. Nguyen became the main target and was stabbed repeatedly in the same spot over and over. Even after Nak managed to free Uriah, Nguyen continued to take the hits until the group finally escaped with her and returned to Yong's village. There, Yong was furious when he learned that his daughter had been taken. But as gratitude for saving her, he agreed to sell his firearms to them at a discount. Uriah's mother even offered them a cannon capable of wiping out dozens of enemies in one shot. However, when Nguyen asked for a further price reduction, mentioning that the request came from Yong's old war friend, the monk, Yong instantly refused. A grudge from the past had never healed. Still determined, Nguyen secretly brought a pouch of clean money, begging to buy the cannon no matter the cost. But his plea was rejected, and he was thrown out of the room in humiliation. It was in that moment that Thong made a painful realization. The money Nguyen carried came from Meek, the nobleman who wanted to marry Soy. Feeling betrayed, Thong punched Nguyen on the spot. Nguyen then revealed the truth. Soy had agreed to mix terms only to save their village and buy weapons for their people. She had sacrificed her happiness for everyone's safety. While emotions ran high, Nak turned to Uriah, asking her to help persuade her father. But when she tried, Yong finally revealed the real source of his hatred. Years ago, when he and the monk served together as soldiers, the monk had stolen his secret weapon blueprints. Since then, Yong had sworn never to cooperate with him again. With no options left, Nguyen made a reckless decision. He considered kidnapping Uriah to force Yong's hand. Nak immediately refused and stepped in to protect her. The argument grew heated until Uriah herself intervened, offering to help them willingly. She had begun to admire Nak, and a bond quietly formed between them. Uriah knew how to build the cannon because her father had taught her the basics, but the explosive material required a different formula, one known by someone else. When they compared notes, they discovered the person who held that knowledge was none other than the former village chief, Chun. The 3 rushed back to Chun's village, only to learn he had died just hours before their arrival. If the formula still existed, it had to be hidden somewhere in his home. They began searching the house, but Nguyen, terrified of encountering Banyan's ghost again, chose to wait outside. Unfortunately, his fear became reality. He ran into Banyan once more. After a brief struggle, he managed to knock her unconscious, just as Thong and Uriah arrived, alerted by his screams. As they examined Banyan, Uriah noticed strange writing across her back. The markings seemed to be instructions, but the symbols were too complex to understand. With no other choice, Nguyen decided they would take Banyan back to the monk and hope he could decipher the message. When Nguyen and his friends returned to their village, they came home empty-handed. The village chief looked confused as the men explained what happened. Yong, the gunsmith they had been searching for, refused to sell any weapons once he learned that the request came from the monk. Although they failed to obtain the firearms, they returned with two things: Yuria, who knew how to build a cannon, and Banyan, who now carried strange writing on her back that was believed to be the key to making the explosive powder. Banyan was tied up to prevent her from harming anyone, and when the monk examined the markings on her back, he was stunned, especially when Banyan twisted her head unnaturally as the spirit inside her reacted. Even so, the monk admitted that he could not read the text and requested time to study the symbols. One by one, everyone left the room, but Nguyen, feeling guilty, returned quietly, planning to copy the writing and secretly free Banyan when no one was watching. The next morning, Nak woke Thong, who was still drowning in heartbreak. Trying to lift his spirits, Nak encouraged him to keep fighting for the woman he loved, and even suggested sweet little lies women might want to hear. Unfortunately, Yuria overheard everything. Feeling deceived, she grew angry at Nak, thinking his love was not sincere. Before the argument could escalate, the village was shaken by an attack. Taipam had arrived with his army of bandits, launching a brutal assault. In the middle of the chaos, Nak shouted over the noise, pouring out his feelings for Yuria. He declared that his love was genuine and that he would die for her if he had to. And in the very next moment, he proved it by shielding her from a deadly arrow. All around them, chaos consumed the village. Houses burned, people screamed and ran for cover, and blades clashed in every direction. Thong, realizing that Soy was in danger, charged through the battlefield to save her. With his heart pounding, he finally confessed the love he had hidden for so long. Meanwhile, Taipam roared for the villagers to hand over the man who killed his brother. Just then, Nyeren arrived, dragging out the unfinished cannon they had been working on. The monk, desperate to protect the villagers, ordered him to fire it. Nyeren lit the fuse and aimed, but the cannon was faulty. The blast backfired, throwing Nyeren to the ground and knocking him unconscious. When he finally opened his eyes, the scene around him was devastating. The bandits had overrun the village. Flames, smoke, and screams filled the air. Only Nak and Thong were still standing, fighting tooth and nail to protect the remaining villagers and drive the bandits back. Before long, the surviving villagers were rounded up and forced into the village square. The bandits held everyone at sword point, and the monk stepped forward, begging Taipam to show mercy. But Taipam ignored him completely. His rage was focused on one thing only. He marched up to Nyeren's father, the village chief, and demanded to know who killed his brother. No one dared to speak. Not a single villager uttered a word. Losing patience, Taipam gave a cruel order. Since no one would confess, he would take Soy, along with every woman in the village, as payment for his brother's blood. Unable to watch innocent lives be taken, Thong stepped forward and sacrificed himself. He claimed that he was the one who killed Tiger. Without hesitation, Taipam prepared to execute him on the spot. But Nyeren could not stay silent any longer. He shouted the truth, explaining what really happened. That Tiger was accidentally killed by his own right-hand man, Kalong. The revelation stunned everyone. Taipam, now realizing that his sworn revenge had been misdirected, turned on Kalong. But Kalong, driven by ambition and betrayal, drew his weapon first and tried to kill Taipam, hoping to seize control of the bandits for himself. His shot missed. Taipam struck back, killing Kalong in a single blow. Still seething, Taipam ordered his men to loot the village and seize the women anyway. But before they could carry out the command, a sudden explosion rocked the battlefield. Smoke and fire burst through the bandit ranks. It was Yong, the gunsmith, arriving with his allies. The man who once refused to get involved now unleashed his firepower to protect the villagers. One well-placed blast tore a hole through Taipam, sending the bandits into a panic and forcing them to flee. At last, the nightmare was over. When the dust settled, Mick crawled out from his hiding spot in a chicken coop. Without a hint of shame, he approached Soy and confidently demanded she honor their marriage agreement that very night. But this time, Nyeren refused to let her face that future. He handed Thong the bag of money Mick had once given him and told him to return it and ask for Soy's hand instead. Thong did not hesitate. With his heart in his hands, he confessed his love, and Soy accepted. Their long-buried feelings finally blossomed into happiness. Not far away, Nak and Yuria, who had fought side by side through danger and chaos, also became an official couple at last. And Jaren, who had been so busy saving everyone else, soon found someone by his side as well. Banyan approached him shyly. She revealed that her father's final wish was for her to find a man with a special birthmark, a man destined to free her from the spirit that haunted her. Garen did not match the prophecy at all, but Banyan did not care. She had already fallen for him, simply because of his kindness. And so, after hardship, battle, terror, and chaos, peace finally returned to the village. The people rebuilt their homes, reclaimed their happiness, and embraced the new futures waiting for them. So the moral of the story is never volunteer to fight bandits, eat exorcism offerings, or borrow wedding money from a creepy nobleman unless you enjoy chaos, ghosts, and accidental hero moments.